different do you see the Tigers since you guys squared off in week 2 of the SEC schedule?
Yeah, I think, when you talk about playing a team, like for instance, we played Arkansas in the SEC championship game very shortly after playing them in the regular season. There wasn't that big of a gap in time. I think when there's been this big of a gap, you have freshmen that act completely differently and have a bunch of different reps under their belt. Any team has probably maneuvered some things in the bullpen differently. You're never 100% healthy when the season starts, but you probably have differences in how injuries are or minor nicks and knacks guys have to. So I think both programs, or teams in this particular case have evolved throughout the year. And, we've had some other things evolve around here as well.
From your perspective, just what are some of the advantages or disadvantages of playing an SEC team in Super Regional, and specifically one that you've already faced?
Yeah, when you get down to a deal where it's Oregon versus LSU, the one thing that sticks out is you have familiarity versus unfamiliarity, and a lot of that boils down to our guys who grunt their way through scouting reports. So you kind of at least have a skeleton of what a program style is. I mean, each team in our league has its own kind of brand name, but then you got to update things, and it kind of relates back to the first question answer we had. Things have changed since then, so it certainly won't be the same, but there is a little bit more familiarity. And then if you kind of, probably at the base of your question is, what about the competitiveness? SEC weekends to me are the most competitive in college baseball until you get to the postseason. And then when you get to regional play and super regional play, it really doesn't matter, what the brand name is or the jersey label. It's probably going to be pretty dang competitive from both sides or both dugouts.
All right, next we'll go to Ben and then Tim Owens.
Tony, I got two things for you. First, I wanted to ask about Blade and just kind of what went into the decision to move him to that second game of the weekend slot, and do you anticipate that continuing? And then how much has Rod Delmonico meant to you and been kind of a shoulder to lean on as you've tried to rebuild this baseball program?
Sure. With Blade, the SEC tournament, we felt like Will Heflin was in a good position to start game one. And, we ended up looking smart because our kids played so well. If he was able to throw game one, then we thought he could come back and throw on Sunday in the final, which he did. So really it kind of became every bit as much about what Will had done workload wise leading up to the regional. But then, you'd also be crazy to not comment on how Blade, again, freshmen have progressed this time of year, and they're not in school anymore, so they should feel and act like sophomores. And Blade also has a lot of talent. So a combination of how well as Blade has thrown the ball, and then also being respectful of the amount of work that Will had to put in leading up to the regional with 3 outings in about 12 days, I think it was. And then Rod's been great. It's funny you bring that up because we'd really like to have Rod throw out a first pitch this weekend. But when you have a regional on site or a super regional, you are the host site, but the NCAA is the group that's actually running it. So we don't have that availability or flexibility. But when we first got the job, the vision we had was playing a game big enough here to get Peyton Manning to throw out a first pitch, which he did, or to get Coach Delmonico to come back to the place where he had as much success as any coach that's been here. I mean, it's not enough on the wall or other, we kind of have some things around the locker room, what his accomplishments are. But he set the standard here. And so a big help from his end has just been the blueprint he left behind here. But then some text messages and phone calls have been great too. He's always very positive, but like any great coach, he kind of always has a little nugget that you can put in your back pocket as well.
Tony, Paul Maneri made some comments on the radio after the first series, calling Tennessee fans downright nasty. Said the UT players were, quote, not handling things with a lot of class, quite frankly. What is your response to that? Isn't it something that you've spoken to your guys about at all?
Yeah, I addressed that weekend. I mean, it's not anything I've spoken to our guys about this coming weekend. About this coming weekend, if it's anything like last weekend, make it that. So if you want to call that nasty, make it that. But I think what we got going on is our fans are trying to compete with what goes on at Baum Stadium or Alex Box Stadium or down in Starkville. For the life of me, I can't think of who played in Oxford on Monday against Mississippi, but ask those guys how that environment was down there. You can give it a lot of different names, but the bottom line is you have the most rowdy and most electric fan bases in the country are in the SEC. And our kids weren't able to play in front of that the first year and a half here. And when we talk about the program evolving, that's one thing that has changed. So if you want to rewind and go back to what happened 10, 11 weeks ago, there's always a reason someone says something. Coach Maneri's a legendary coach, so he's not just going to come out with something, out of left field. You have a smaller crowd, so you can hear exact words people are saying with those smaller COVID crowds. And you had a group of 5 or 6 guys that probably had some pops in them all over Trey Morgan at first base. And to be honest with you, if you go back and you look at those box scores, Trey Morgan's pretty good to begin with, but they might have even motivated Trey Morgan a little bit because that guy literally could not get out on our field. And then in referencing, our players as far as being classy, I think our guys have done a lot in the community to show that they've got class. The particular instance that went on there is the Tennessee resident that's on their roster, and about 3 or 4 of our guys probably had exchanged words before that moment, but there was a back and forth going on between those guys. But if you're talking about whole team, it's probably pretty evident if you go back in time, our guys have a lot of respect for LSU and the guys they competed against that particular weekend.
We'll go to Rick Russo next, and then Wes Rucker after that.
Hey, Tony, congratulations on the run so far. Following up on that, certainly one of the storylines is LSU playing for their coach who's retiring at the end of this season. Maybe talk about that and how that might fire them up. But also the fact that you guys are at home, and if the stat is correct, I think Tennessee in regional games at home, 17-5. So I would imagine that can't be understated, the fact that you guys are home this weekend.
No, I think our guys feed off the crowd here. It really kind of feeds the mindset that I think is around here of, kind of knocking down the walls, literally, or just improving the program one step at a time. And again, we want our fan base to fit in with the other great ones in this league. And the amount of fans and the way they watch the games and the way they handle themselves it's on an incline. And we'd like to think that our program is on an incline as well. So it's kind of been fun to see how the two have worked together. And, I think our kids feed off it, like I said, on the field performance-wise, but it also kind of plays into that mindset of this is what I came here to do, was either change this or be a part of the vision that the coaching staff had when they took the job here. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a fun ride. And, whichever team wins this weekend, you go play at another facility. So one more ride in Lindsey Nelson Stadium is what the guys have. And I think they're relishing in that opportunity. And then as far as Paul Maneri goes, it was interesting when it went down. I thought at the SEC tournament, there'd be a lot more questions and things like that for every coach there about it because of the mark he's made on the game. And I don't know how they feel in the clubhouse or if they have their own mantra or whatever it might be. I just know the guy was one of the first people when I was hired at Tennessee to reach out and congratulate me. And that's something I won't forget. So I'm appreciative of that. And I have an incredible amount of respect for anyone who has success in this game, but more in particular in this league, which can chew you up and spit you out. So again, whatever mantra they have going on is their deal. And I think we're just kind of keeping it simple over here. It's another SEC weekend, which is always competitive and fun. But when you get to this time of year, great for you people to write up stories, and it's a lot of fun to have debates. But you're going to have two sides that really, really want to win, whether it's our super regional or another one.
Tony, I'm wondering if, those series that y'all played this season, the one against Florida, the one against Vandy, Arkansas, the regional last weekend, do moments like that make you feel more comfortable that your guys will go out there and just play ball and maybe use the crowd for juice, but also not get completely distracted by it and not focus on the game itself?
Incredibly comfortable, especially based off prior experience. I don't want to say I wasn't confident when we went to Hoover in 2019. I feel like always, if we prepare well, I feel that I'm confident regardless of what coaching staff I've been a part of. And I've been fortunate enough to be around real good players too. So if you got good athletes that are prepared, you should feel like you're set up to have success. But it was a very uneasy environment at Hoover for a group of guys who were doing something for the first time and that was kind of out of their norm. And these guys, even though there have been some things like the SEC final that maybe are their first, they've done incredibly well in those situations. And whether it's gone well or poorly, like losing a series to Vanderbilt, they've taken some nuggets in those situations and kind of put them to use. And so I think everything that's gone on this year, all the extra inning games, a lot of road games, a lot of road wins, some tough breaks, some interesting breaks in a couple situations. Again, all things that we know in our clubhouse, they've either fed off them or they've used the learning experience to have, future success. So I do think it means a lot.
All right, next we'll go to Trey Wallace and then David Oven.
Hey, Tony, having the, I guess you could call it extra day because LSU played the other night and had to travel back. So now you guys don't play till Saturday. Is that going to, first off, how's that help your team when it comes to resting arms and then also the hitting? But also, is that going to help you make decisions on what you do with the pitching rotation this weekend?
It could affect bullpen stuff. I think anytime you get an extra day as a pitcher, it's more of a positive than a negative. So really just the whole group, I think, benefits from that. The other thing is you have, obviously, starting from the top, probably out of control emotions that go on when you have a weekend like last weekend, because we didn't just win. You had to grind out a crazy game against Liberty. And then also, the first game, the way it went down, there's a lot of emotion and that can be fatiguing that goes on in that. So I think it really allows our group to kind of gather themselves and get sorted back on a lifting and throwing schedule going into the weekend. I don't know that it will drastically change any decisions we would make with who goes where. But for us, that's kind of our situation. And then, again, you always look at the opponent. Flying back from the West Coast, it's kind of the same deal. You pick a moment to start your week, and the buildup will have something to do with it. But really, it's all about when the first pitch is thrown, you're in the middle of a firefight, and you compete as best as you can, and then let the results take care of themselves. And the one thing I'll fall back on is an earlier answer. The comforting feeling for our staff is this crazy and weird group we have this year has put us in about as many different scenarios as you can envision. And I do think that helps set you up for success when you do experience all those things.
Tony, after the way last season ended, what has it been like to just be able to chase this thing?
It's been doubly fulfilling, if that's an accurate way to say it, but you kind of, and I think we were, especially me personally, kind of victims of this. You're almost trying to have two great seasons in one, the time of one, and you can't do that. It's kind of like a pitcher, trying to make up for a pitch he threw earlier, trying to throw two baseballs at one time. It's just not going to work out. But as we did kind of get sorted and get into a routine and we're able to kind of navigate through all the COVID stuff, we found our rhythm a little bit. And, not only were we winning games earlier prior to finding our rhythm, we then started to play better baseball. And so it became more fun. And I think when you look back on how that went down, last year, the frustration is kind of similar to that week leading up to that Wright State game. You work so hard and you have a strong vision, and now all of a sudden somebody wants to tell you there's some controversy behind it, or it's not going to go the way that you wanted it to. you battle on. And then when you do have success, again, there's that outpouring of emotion where it kind of means almost a little bit more. So not a real clean way to say that, but it definitely means more, and it's definitely been a motivating factor.
All right, next we'll go to Teresa Walker, and then after that we'll go to David Pascal.
Coach, you mentioned this group that you've got this year. They've got a knack for coming through with the big hit at the right moment, most particularly and most recently the Grand Slam on Friday night. As a coach, is that something that you've got to have a bit in your team, or can you cultivate that? And how effective has that been for you?
Yeah, no, it's been a big part of the whole deal. I mean, we go to Georgia Southern and to win 2 games on the road at a strong program like that is one thing, but we were able to win an extra inning game with a grand slam at a huge moment by Liam Spence to start our season off 3-0. And that was the first moment where it was like, let's not be good, let's be great, because if you can do this, you can be great. And then it's kind of spiraled into a deal where the whole group thinks they can get it done in a lot of different situations. And what you see as an individual on any particular day, maybe be the guy or is the one selected to do an interview or had a big hit, but they all seem to be candidates because they all feel just as strongly, the guys in the dugout and the guys on the field, that they can kind of plow through any obstacle and find a way to get it done. And I wish you could cultivate it to the extent that it's arrived this year. I mean, we certainly try and do things to make our team tougher or to think they can get through adverse circumstances, but I just think it's a group thing. They have a little thing about them about finding a way, and sometimes it's not very pretty. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they get overly excited when they do it, which I think they've deserved the right to act that way if something goes well. But however it happens, it's kind of been a find a way group, and I wish I could coach it or go give a speech on it. I'd probably make some money off that deal. But it's kind of been their little deal that they've created.
Tony, this is kind of a follow-up to that. Given the number of walk-offs you've had and how every home run now kind of gains in magnitude, do you limit at all home run celebrations for your players, or do you just let them go? Because you obviously coach with a lot of emotion.
Yeah. And I mean, I come from a family where my dad was, put your head down and run and don't celebrate, and blue collar and just outwork everybody. And I think it served me well, and I'd like to think that's who I am deep down, but also things have changed a little bit. And, my initial or younger reaction to Jose Batista throwing his bat dang near in the other team's dugout is that ain't right, and somebody needs to punch that guy, which actually happened. But the other thing is, dude, as far as he hit that ball in that situation, if you can do that, there's only a few people on the planet, you need to celebrate it. And, I don't encourage it. I don't remember a time where I yelled at a guy for doing something too crazy. I guess I have yelled at a couple guys to run down the line, but these kids have earned the right to be who they are. And I think that's why they've kind of created their own little thing. I don't know what the daddy hat is. I honestly have no idea what that is, but we have very high standards, like all the other teams in our league, in the classroom, how they act off the field, how they are as teammates, picking up trash, just little things. And if you check all those boxes, then you get a little bit of latitude from our staff to be who you are. So that's kind of how I feel about it. And if anything, I do remember Zach Daniels. He sent me a great message. I like bringing him up because he's such a loved kid around here. He's a draft pick last year. He was a kid who could hit a ball 5 miles, but he always kind of didn't want to rock the boat a little bit. And part of the deal is to be the best version of you, which Zach became when he was here. Hey man, if you hit it 500 feet, you might want to watch it for a second or smile when you're circling around the bases, because there's not that many people that can do that. And I never really had that attitude as a player. And I wish I could go back in time and have the deal where if Alex Bregman is on your team, you love him. And if he's not, you absolutely hate him. And if Drew Gilbert is on your team, you would do anything to go into battle with that guy and do anything for him in battle. And if you're in the other dugout, you probably don't like the guy.
All right, we got time for two more guys. We'll go to Travis Brown, and then we'll finish with Dan Harrelson.
Hey, Coach, apologize for one a little bit out of left field, but with Jim Schlosser getting named to the A&M job today, curious on your thoughts on what he'll bring to the program in College Station and to the conference, and then if there any lessons or part of what you are as a coach that you can remember you learned from Coach Schlosser or your time at TCU.
Yeah, not being on social media has its benefits and then also not benefits. I had no idea about that till about an hour and a half ago. Someone texted something about it. So, Coach Childress was a guy that I had a lot of respect for as a player. I knew I wanted to coach, and he was kind of one of those guys I would study a little bit. So I'm sure what he's left behind is pretty strong, as are all the other programs in the league. But whoever gets a job, like Coach Schlossnagel will go there, put his own spin on it, and every team is going to be good in the league. And every year the league is going to be really, really tough. And then when I was down there, probably the best thing that happened to me was I met Josh Elander. He was a guy who had that kind of the Kobe Bryant thing for a coach is the dream. Your best player is your best worker. And, he was certainly our most talented offensive player. And he would also wear me out. We'd have to go to the cage every Thursday and be not just for a little bit, we're talking 60 to 90 minutes. And one of those things, that back and forth and getting to know him, is what made our relationship of kind of working with hitters and then eventually working together and trusting him with our recruiting. It all kind of stemmed back to those days. So that's the thing I take the most from that time down there.
Thanks, Coach.
Yeah.
Coach, I wanted to ask you about player development in relation to the Cape Cod League. I believe you have Drew Gilbert and Jordan Beck on roster as soon as this postseason run ends that will be playing in that. And speaking of one of the coaches in your past, Tim Jamison, that you played for and coached for at Missouri, he mentioned this week it's having players play in the Cape Cod League is huge for competition and just to continue to develop when they do come back for that next season. Just talk about the Cape Cod League and players just getting better from that.
Yeah, and I need to reach out to Coach Jay. I'm glad you reminded me. He's an incredible human being, and I owe a lot to him. And I think he's accurate with that statement because it's one of the things we preach to families about the SEC. Come find out what you can do against the best. And because the Cape Cod has a tradition, and also it's where scouts will flock to and some other things in its favor, you get a strong group of players up there. Now there's some other leagues too, all the way out to the West Coast, that have done a really good job. And there's so many options now for these guys, but that one it's an exclusive club to an extent. And I think the summer is an important time for these kids to go out and play in general. And just when it's good competition, it makes it better. But going back to what I was kind of talking about, it's a time where there's not so much pressure. I mean, these kids, again, I'm trying to tell you earlier, we want our guys to be comfortable in their own skin and be who they are. And if it's something out of line, we think we can correct their behavior. But there's a lot of pressure on them in this deal. Like, if I don't play well, maybe I won't get another at bat or pitch again. And if again, the SEC fans are into this thing. If we don't win, maybe on my Twitter, someone will be mad at me. I didn't do this or that. In the summer, it's a little bit more relaxed and the kids can experiment. They can kind of pick their teammates' brains that come from other programs. And it's really a time when guys blossom. And speaking of Coach Jamison, I mean, we were able to be around Max Scherzer. I mean, we like to take credit for what Max did, but Max did what Max did. And a huge step for it was in the summer after his freshman year is when he kind of made the jump of being the start of being who he's become.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you, guys. Have a great week.